to Allies or Enemies. Today we are talking about Wyrmspan. Our copy was provided for review, but the thoughts in this video are all our own. Wyrmspan is a 1 to 5 player game designed by Connie Vogelmann. It's a new take on the incredibly popular bird collecting card game Wingspan, but this time the birds are replaced by fearsome and often not so fearsome dragons. Although the changes here are a lot more than just a coat of scaly paint. So let's start there with a look at how it plays.
You start the game with a few cards, some resources, a few coins, an egg, and a big empty board just waiting for dragons. On your turn, you spend a coin to do one of 3 actions. Either excavate, which means adding a cave to your cavern, entice, which means spending resources to add a dragon to a cave, and explore, which means walking your adventurer through one of your caverns and doing each of the actions you step on along the way. Doing all of this will also gain you all kinds of bonuses, such as getting more cards, resources, and coins, laying eggs around your caves, and moving your marker around the Dragon Guild track, which will get you even more stuff and possibly endgame points. At the end of each round, you check who won that round's bonus goal, and after 4 rounds, you add up all your points from dragons, tucked cards and cached stuff, endgame goals, round goals, the Dragon Guild, and a few points for leftover stuff, and then the greatest dragon keeper is named.
The first big question is, how is this different from Wingspan? The biggest difference would be that instead of birds, there are dragons. But there are several more subtle but equally large changes as well. First of all, you don't have a set number of actions that diminish each round. Here, you spend coins for actions, and you always start each round gaining 6 of these. Plus, you can gain more through various bonuses or spend them to play certain dragons or take certain effects. So, the round length is much more variable. The next big thing is that you need to excavate your spaces before you play your dragons, adding another kind of card and another layer. And perhaps most importantly, your resources are no longer random. There are no dice to roll. You just take the resources listed. There are other things too, like the Dragon Guild, the exploring action moving from left to right, and more. But those 3 are the biggest changes that really stood out to us.
The other big difference is, of course, the components. And we'll start here with the big sell, which is the dragons. And there are a ton of them. Actually, there are 13 more dragons than base game Wingspan has birds. And Wingspan has a lot of birds. The actual artwork on all of these is terrific, although we do wish they had a little bit more color in the background. The cavern cards are also nice, with a kind of cool watercolor style. The same watercolor style is on the player boards as well, which may be the largest player boards that we have seen in any game. We do kind of miss having that central bird feeder though, but the awesome speckled eggs go some way to easing that, and it is nice that the game comes with a couple of little resource boxes. Perhaps most impressive here though is how clear all of the iconography and everything is. Between the cards and the player boards, there was never a time that the rules weren't crystal clear.
The most obvious point of variability will be those cards with 183 different dragons, all with slightly different powers, and 75 different cave cards. So it is exceedingly unlikely that you will see the same mix twice. There are also 4 different dragon guilds with a slightly different mix of bonuses and 10 double-sided objectives. This last one is perhaps the thing that will change your focus the most, as it gives you a direction to build towards that often takes you down some new paths. Games will also play a bit different depending on which of your caverns you end up focusing on, as each give you different printed bonuses. But with the right dragons, each can provide a slightly different path to victory. A lot of these things are maybe more slight nuance than huge changes, but in each game, the puzzle will at least be a bit different.
Wyrmspan plays from 1 to 5. Our focus has been on the 2-player game, and it works well at that count, with the only change being which side of the Dragon Guild you use. At higher counts, the market will turn over a bit faster, but as it clears out after each round, this won't be a major issue at 2 players. Also, at more players, there will be more competition for those round goals, so you may need to choose a couple to focus on. But since there isn't any direct interaction, the biggest thing that will be different is time, and turns can slow down a little bit. So far, we have found Wyrmspan to be a bit more AP inducing than its feathered counterpart. So if you have indecision prone friends, that may be something to keep in mind. There is also a solo mode that has you taking on an automa that's run by a deck of cards. This is a full bot, but it is particularly easy to run and has a bunch of difficulty levels. I got my butt kicked at level 2 out of 6, so there is definitely a challenge here.
Wyrmspan is certainly more than just a new coat of paint. This is a thinkier, less random, but in many more ways more demanding game than its predecessor. But whether or not that makes it better will depend on your taste and your group. For newer players, we would still suggest Wingspan, as it is prettier and it feels a bit more accessible, perhaps in part because of the randomness, which sometimes can level the playing field a bit and can create more branching options. Wyrmspan is a much tighter and slightly heavier game that will generally reward the player who can make a plan and stick to it, finding ways to maximize their coins and chaining their actions by thinking 3 or 4 turns ahead. So, for those that dislike the random elements of Wingspan and want an alternative that is a smidge more of a brain burner, Wyrmspan certainly does that. But if what you're looking for is slight tweaks to the original, we may suggest looking at the Oceania or Asia expansions first. In the end, it is interesting to see an alternate take on one of the best-selling hobby games. And while it likely won't win over those that didn't flock to the original, it may tip the scales for some that were on the fence.
And that is it. Have you played Wyrmspan? What did you think? And how do you think it compares to Wingspan? Please let us know in the comments, and please like and subscribe, and hopefully we will see you all next time for another game.